Q is a project that is funded by the National Science Foundation as my career award. And the idea of the project is to, in the widest sense, promote qualitative research methods in engineering education. And the way that we're trying to do this is to acknowledge there's a diversity of qualitative methods that we use within the community, but we don't have a coherent way of talking about research quality, because there are many traditions, and each of those traditions bring their own good ideas. And what this project really is about, to facilitate sort of a coherent conversation about this topic within the research community, so that at the end we can maybe more clearly articulate what we mean by high quality qualitative engineering education research, and that sort of support the credibility and the impact of those methods.
Quantitative methods are usually in a positivist paradigm, whereas qualitative methods, often, not always, are situated in an interpretivist paradigm. And so that's somewhat different from traditional engineering research, which is why we really need projects like QQ to see what qualitative research looks like in the context of engineering education.
So the idea that we started with was to think about research quality on a very fundamental level, and that makes it somewhat dense and theoretical as well. And we synthesized a lot of the literature that's out there, so qualitative research has been done in other fields for 100 years. So we tried to pull that together and identify core sort of fundamental features of what makes good research, and describe them in a way that it becomes independent of the particular methodological tradition that a project might sit in, and have these ways that we talk about quality as a language to describe research practice in the context of specific projects. So not to have a recipe here, here's the checklist and you check out of these 10, 8 out of these 10, or here are the steps that you go, but here's some fundamental ways of thinking about research quality that cut across a lot of methodologies. They might mean different things in your project with your particular methodology, but they have such a fundamental meaning that they're applicable across these methods. So the idea is less to develop a prescriptive model of any sort, but to provide the language and concepts to explore research quality in the context of specific one.
So rather than think about standards that we apply at the end of the research, we think about quality as being a product of processes that are implemented during the whole research project.
So this is the second in a two-sequence workshop, and we have a lot of the same folks, so we wanted to have a coherence of that conversation. And in the first workshop that was held last year in Athens, Georgia, we explored together the theoretical foundations of this framework and the fundamental ways of talking about and thinking about quality that I described earlier. And this workshop really is about applying that to practice, so people's own projects. So we have about half faculty and half graduate students in this workshop that all deeply work in the qualitative research area. And we use these fundamental ways of thinking about quality to generate questions that are specific to the context of the research projects that people work on. So we have this high-level theoretical dense stuff that we break down into questions that just stimulate sort of thinking about research quality as it applies to a particular methodology and a particular project.
Our hope is that our work will give people the language to speak about issues of quality in their research projects. So for example, a lot of people triangulate their data because it's something that we've all heard. If we get data from different sources, then this is going to lead to a high-quality project. And in the framework, we can think of triangulation as a way of procedural validation, so something that we build into the research design, and it contributes to the research project in certain ways. And so our framework gives people a way to think more deeply about things that they probably do anyway, but don't really know why. And a lot of our work is developing now through working with other engineering education researchers and looking at their projects and seeing what quality issues that they have, and also working with the other projects that we're working on. That's also deepening our understanding of these concepts. That was the original goal of these workshops, to build social capital around qualitative research quality, so that we could all start using a somewhat similar language, so that we know how to advise each other on projects, offer input, and so we also know what to look for in final publications.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that collaborative research is sort of more typical really for engineering education research we found. In our own interdisciplinary collaborations at our university, there's often, there's a model in other disciplines that education research is done sort of individually. And in engineering education, we've inherited more sort of the lab, or I guess larger research group model of engineering science research, which poses interesting challenges and opportunities. So the research itself that engineering education folks often do is collaborative in nature, which is not always the case for other types of educational research. And this is also why we approach the workshop sequence as a collaborative endeavor. So we brought, for example, since last year, brought a group of 6 or 7
6 authors.
Yeah, 6 participants together to really explore this idea of these fundamental ways of talking about quality in the context of their own work, and collaborating on a multiple voices paper that we want to submit to our journal. And the idea here is really to take this language and apply it to specific research practice. So not theorize about it and not sort of go off on these tangents, but to focus on practice anecdotes, so what actually happened in someone's research projects, and how the language and these concepts in this quality framework help to deepen our understanding, get a better handle on resolving some of the situation and explaining them. And that has been a really interesting process for us in the sense of working closely with cutting-edge engineering education researchers, getting an insight in the sort of daily running of their projects, discuss in depth challenges for methodology or conducting research, which is something that you don't normally hear, but the publication is sort of the tidied up version in the end. This is all neat and all work.